Hey, y'all, and welcome back to another episode discussing energy. Today, we're going to continue our discussion over the flower of life. I just want to warn you, though, that this book makes some pretty out there claims. So take what resonates. If it doesn't resonate, it's okay. Or if you don't understand, that's okay as well. But a lot of this is going to challenge your current belief systems. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong or that I believe it or I don't. You know how I am. I just want to give you the information so that you have it. Okay. Now, in this episode, we talk about important players to the discovery of this information, where it can be found in history, the connection that it has to important sacred geometry, and also interdimensional travel. So, this is going to be a longer episode. So, we'll jump right in. Okay. And we'll start with challenging our current belief systems. All right. Now, we know that as we gain more information, it is important that our perspective changes based on how we feel about the information we receive. Why? Because your beliefs shape your reality, which has been scientifically proven when you look at the atom. Originally, they believed that the atom to be similar to a watermelon, with the electrons being the seeds of the watermelon. But later, they found that the person who is viewing the atom is influencing the outcome, which tells us that consciousness can change the outcome of an experiment. Again, Taja, why is this important? Because everything in the universe is an atom with positively charged protons, which represents the masculine component, neutrons, which are the neutral charges, okay? The balancing component, or the component that binds everything together, it has masculine and feminine principles. And then the negatively charged components, which we're going to call electrons, the feminine component. This can be easily seen in your chakra system, which is a part of your etheric body. You have three negatively charged or feminine chakras, which are the bottom three: the heart space, which is the bridge to higher levels of consciousness, or the neutral neutron component, and then the positively charged ones, which are going to be the top three, or masculine chakras. Okay. Masculine is electric or positive, and feminine is dielectric or negative. Okay. On a larger scale, this can also be seen in the planets. The sun, Mars, and Jupiter are the masculine components. The moon, Venus, and Saturn are the feminine components. And Mercury is the neutral component, because Mercury is both masculine and feminine. That's why Mercury is called the hermaphrodite. Okay. These were considered to be the main seven planets, like above, are considered to be the main seven chakras. Okay. We know there are more planets in about 160 different chakras, but these are the main ones. Everything that is manifested in this universe exists within the principle of gender, which means you will have both masculine and feminine components. Okay. This is proof of this concept. So if someone is observing the atom, the consciousness of that something that is observing can influence that atom. So that means, one, everything that is conscious has the ability to influence us. And literally everything in existence here is conscious. Colors, crystals, rocks, water, literally look around. Anything that you see is conscious. Okay. You are also conscious. And when you observe your reality from the understanding that you are not the thing, but the observer of the thing, meaning your body is just the car you are driving while you navigate this world, but it is not you. You are the thing watching through the windshield or eyes of the car. When you can really understand that, then you can also influence your reality in a very profound way. Okay. Because you are literally influencing everything every single day. When you can learn to do it for yourself and separate yourself from this vessel, right? You can make a great impact in your life, and you can start shaping it and molding it to be exactly what you want it to be. If we have never changed our perspective on what we thought an atom was, then we may have never realized that others influence us. And by others, that means everything in existence, and that we influence everything in existence, including ourselves as well. Some of this beginning information is going to seem kind of sporadic, but it makes sense for later. Okay. So, something that I say very often is that we are stars in a body. We literally are. Okay. If you look at planets, which planets are not actually, so there's a difference between a planet and a star. They're the exact same thing, but a star is breathing and living, whereas a planet has its oxygen source restricted. Okay. Now, a star is also an atom as well. They're very much alive with their own personalities. Scientifically, they go through growth or evolutionary stages like us too. They all start out as hydrogen suns, which is the current stage of our sun. In this stage, two hydrogens come together in a fusion reaction to form helium. And apparently, this process creates all the life and light on Earth. Then as the star gets older, another fusion happens, which is called the helium process. This contains three helium atoms coming together to form carbon, and this continues to evolve until it gets to a particle level of the periodic table, which signifies that the star has reached its lifespan. Now, there are two things that can happen when a star reaches the end of its lifespan. And there's new data that may expand these options as well, but we're just going to focus on the primary two. So, one, the star can explode and become a supernova. This is a huge hydrogen cloud that makes new baby stars. Or two, it can expand quickly into a red giant, which is a big explosion that engulfs all of the planets that are surrounding. Think in Revelations, everything's going to be on fire, everything's going to be burning, the sky is going to be red, everything is burned up, and the whole world is destroyed. After, it stays expanded for a while until it finally collapses into a white dwarf. Now, scientifically, they found that the white dwarf contains the heaviest matter in the universe, about 1.5 million tons per cubic inch. This information about the dwarf star and the life cycle of a star can be traced back to the Dogon people, who said that a dolphin-like being came out of the water and told them things that they should not have known, like about the dwarf star Sirius B that is orbiting around Sirius A. Okay. Now, they have a cave full of hieroglyphics, which are hieroglyph just translates into holy writings. And someone is always sitting outside of the cave because their job for their entire life is just to protect the hieroglyphs. Okay. The same story appears in civilizations across the world. Now, prophecies and planet placements are literally what are on these hieroglyphs. There's no way for these people to know this information. Okay. Now ask yourself, if this story appears all across the world, the same exact story, why don't we know about it? Why is it not talked about in school? My guess is because it challenges the system that they put in place to keep us locked into a specific consciousness level. If we knew that there were highly intelligent beings that look like dolphins, that changes everything that we thought that we knew. Okay. So instead they hid it. And the Dogon people are dead set on protecting and preserving the hieroglyphics because they know how those people are. It has been said by Edgar Cayce, who was a prophet, that there is a hall of records underneath the right paw of the Sphinx that can prove the existence of an advanced civilization that appeared on Earth 500 million years ago. Edgar Cayce made 14,000 predictions in his lifetime, and about 12,000 came true, and the other 2,000 were still in the future when this book was written. He only made one wrong prediction, which was he was giving somebody a reading, and instead of reading the person that was in front of him, he read his twin brother. Okay, that's the only mistake he's ever made. Okay, but it was also said by Thoth, who we discussed before and we'll discuss here shortly. We're going to go into Thoth like really deep in detail today. Okay. Now, apparently 5.5 million years ago, something catastrophic happened, which altered the Akashic records, which is the Omniverse's record hall of everything that has existed, will exist, and is happening right now. Okay. So anything that happens already been recorded and put into this Akashic record, and whatever happened that was so catastrophic that it erased millions of years of history, which is like, what the fuck was that? You know? But it should not been able to do that, but it happened. Okay. So anything that happens stays in vibrational form forever. And apparently this was destroyed when whatever happened. Okay. How? We don't know. But I wanted to mention this because the Akashic records now only goes back 5.5 million years when it should go back at least 500 million years. That's the more random stuff, but it's just like stuff that has happened in history that I feel like, is not talked about a lot, and we need to explore more. Okay, so let's take a second and talk about Thoth. Okay, now people call him Thoth. The O is a long O, so it's Thoth. Okay, many people don't know that Thoth goes back to the beginning of Atlantis. Apparently, he figured out how to stay conscious in one body continuously without dying, and he remained in that body until about 1991 when he transformed into another state of being. Him and his wife transformed into another state of being. In Atlantis, he was the king of Atlantis for about 16,000 years. He went by the name Cheket Arlich Vamalites. And Arlich Vamalites is his real name, and Cheket just means the seeker of wisdom. It was his life goal to be what wisdom is. When Atlantis sank, he and other advanced beings had to wait 6,000 years to reestablish civilization, which became ancient Egypt. Now, as Egypt started to come alive, Arlich stepped forward and started calling himself Thoth. And when Egypt died, Thoth helped to establish the next civilization, which was ancient Greece. Now, before I said Pythagoras stole from the ancient Egyptians, but this text, which is written by a man who claims that Thoth appeared to him many, many times, actually says that Thoth taught Pythagoras. Now, all of our history books say that our current civilization is based on the foundation that Greece set. That Pythagoras and the Pythagorean school advanced the civilization that became Greece. And apparently, in all of Pythagoras' writings, he says himself that Thoth led him under the Great Pyramids and taught him about all the geometries and the nature of our reality. Once Greece was established through Pythagoras, Thoth used the same body from Atlantis to step into a new civilization as Hermes. So, Alych Vomilites, whatever his last name is, Thoth and Hermes are all the same person. And the Emerald Tablets written by Hermes 2,000 years ago confirms this apparently, like all of them being connected, okay? Now, I've always been told that the Emerald Tablets were written by Thoth and Hermes are the same person, but it just throws me off that this specific book says that Hermes, when he was going by the name Hermes, is when he wrote these Emerald Tablets, okay? All right, so, but the guy who wrote this book said that he was doing a deep breath meditation for about 1.5 to 2 hours. And this little copper colored man with long hair that was pulled back and a 6-inch beard with several knots in it appeared before him. He was wearing tan cotton and looked to be about 60 to 70 years old with huge eyes that reminded him of a baby's eyes because there was nothing there, no thoughts or judgment, just being. And this man asked him if he knew what 3 atoms were missing in the universe, to which he replied no, and then he took him on a journey back to the beginning of creation and then forward. He didn't see him for years until he reappeared 12 years later in about 1984 and came almost every day from 1984 to 1991 when he said he was transitioning into a new state of being. He said he came in for about 4 to 8 hours a day to teach him what we will learn in this series, which was later substantiated by other great teachers in history. Thoth taught him about the history of the earth because he was the scribe, meaning that he would just sit and observe and record events that were happening, only saying something when divinely necessary. He had also learned how to leave Earth, so he spent about 2,000 years exploring other planets, and he never interfered, just observed, because to him that was the way to gain true wisdom and knowledge, being and observing in the moment. He told him that the earth is still a baby, but it had been around for 5 billion years. He also told him that spirit is forever and that spirit cannot die. And if you believe otherwise, then it's just an illusion. Thoth considered himself to be from earth because he learned how to become immortal here. Now, in the Egyptian pantheon, his wife is Mayat, but he also has been linked to Shesat, who kept the library of the gods. The author says that Shesat is his wife and he has met her plenty of times. This is who he transitioned into another state of being with. She actually brought him while he was still in full spirit to Earth in about 1500 BC, and they made a link across dimensions. When Thoth came back into his life 12 years later, he initiated him, having him travel all over Egypt to perform ceremonies, repeating long phrases in the Atlantean language, meaning like the original Atlantean language, and doing light body meditations. At the end of this episode, I may give you one of the meditations, not this episode, but at the end of this journey talking about the flower of life, I might give you this meditation. Now that we understand where this information came from, let's talk about what he learned. So before this man met Thoth, 2 beings came to him and were guiding him on a journey of alchemy. They gave knowledge about sacred geometry, told him how the reality was connected to spirit, and gave him meditations to do, which is what he was doing when he met Thoth the first time. He said these beings identified as angels. As I said before, Thoth had learned how to stay conscious in his body without dying, but the process was tedious and took a lot out of him. He wanted the author to give him the meditation that the angels gave him in exchange for his memories and knowledge, because he was struggling to continue to stay conscious in his body, and the meditation was way easier than what he had to do initially. So the initial way required him to be in meditation for 2 hours a day, or his body would die. 1 hour was done with his head facing north and feet to the south, and the other doing a different meditation. Then every 50 years, he would have to either sit in the Hall of Amenti for 10 years. If you don't know what the Hall of Amenti is, this is what the Egyptians consider to be what we would consider to be hell. It's kind of like a purgatory space where spirits go after they pass on. I later found out that Amenti was a stargate, so it might be another realm altogether. But that's neither here nor there. Or before, he would have to sit before the flower of life, which is the pure flame of consciousness, which lives deep in the womb of the earth. Okay, so our level of consciousness directly depends on the pure flame consciousness, which has also been called metamorphosis consciousness. So the meditation he wanted was the Merkaba meditation, which would do what he had to do in 2 hours in just 6 breaths. Okay, so this Merkaba meditation is more accurate, easier, and had greater potential because it leads to a permanent form of awareness. So the deal was made and information was exchanged. And the only reason why I'm telling you guys this top part is because most people are going to ask, well, why would Thoth appear to him? And it's because he was doing this Merkaba meditation and he reached a level of consciousness where Thoth was, right? Because we're at different perspectives of consciousness. So while he was meditating for 1.5 hours, he entered into a new level of consciousness and Thoth appeared because Thoth was doing his meditation at that same time. And he's like, well, how the hell did you get here? You know, it's like that type of situation. Okay. Now he said Thoth would appear in his room and would communicate with him using telepathy and holographic images that were projected into his awareness. Now, remember when I said the ancient civilizations communicated in images on TikTok? Yeah, this gave me great confirmation. He also said that if he needed to describe something in greater detail, he would taste, feel, smell, hear, or see those thoughts. Now, I'm going to just, for a brief second, let me explain this to y'all. And I've talked about this on TikTok, I have been having really strong visions where it feels like it's happening to me, but I also get images in that vision. I know this sounds crazy as hell, but I also get photos in the vision. So I can tell when I come out of it, it feels scary. It feels like it's happening to me, but I can tell when I come out of it that it's just a vision that is being pushed my way in a very intense way so that I remember it. Cause like all of my senses are involved in this. And then I'll see like something that's an image and then it'll go back to whatever is happening. So I haven't had experience with this type of telepathic communication. And I will say it is very fucking intense. It feels like something is happening to you, but you're in a sleep state. But it feels like you're conscious in that sleep state, meaning like you're fully aware, you're fully moving, you're fully whatever, but you are in your bed. It's strange. Anyways, the telepathic communication was described as a little ball of light going from third eye to third eye. Thoth taught him about sacred geometry and filled in the gaps that had been left by the angels. He spent days drawing these figures and shapes, being taught about what was feminine and what was masculine, etc., looking at everything separately. Okay, when I say these shapes, I'm really talking about what we learned about in the sacred geometry episodes. Like he literally had him drawing them until they came up with an image that contained all of the knowledge of everything, both feminine and masculine, which was what we now call the flower of life. Okay. The flower of life contains all the sacred geometries. Now, I've said that before. We're going to get into like how eventually. Okay. So we know that the flower of life was literally found in ancient civilizations around the world. And centuries before this author was even born. Okay. At this time, though, the author did not know that at all. Like he literally, this is his first time seeing the flower of life. And when Thoth told him he could find it in 2 places in Egypt, he doubted Thoth because he had spent 3 to 4 months in Egypt when he was doing his initiation process and even read every book he could about Egypt. And he never saw it or never heard of it before. About 2 weeks later, though, he saw his friend who wrote 3 books on crystals and just came back from a trip to Egypt, and she was in a grocery store. She had all these pictures and she told him her guides told her to give him a specific picture the next time that she saw him. And long and behold, the picture was of a faded flower of life. And I'm going to put it on the screen so you guys can see that. Okay. It's in one of the oldest temples on the planet, which is about 6,000 years old. The temple is called Ibodus and is a series of 3 temples dedicated to Osiris. He had not even told anyone what he was doing or what he was experiencing. So let me stop for a second and say this. There are no coincidences. We are all connected and we are always being aligned with whatever path we're on it comes to, like, literally, you don't have to look or chase anything. It is going to come to you in so many different forms, in so many different ways. And sometimes it's through other people. Okay. So when synchronicities happen, do not dismiss them, because they are meant to lead you towards something, whether it be new information or a higher level of consciousness, a higher level of understanding. So I hope this made sense. So basically, the Egyptians knew about resurrection. They knew about timeline jumping, which is something that we're going to talk about in just a moment. They also constructed everything using sacred geometry, which speaks to their level of consciousness. And a lot of their constructions was specific to Christ consciousness, which is this next state of consciousness. Because right now we're in duality consciousness. Christ consciousness is like the next state of consciousness we're supposed to be reaching. And when I say Christ consciousness, I don't mean Christ as in Jesus Christ. Okay. They just put that name. I literally think that they use that name specifically to confuse people so that they can associate it with Jesus Christ. That's not what it is. Christ consciousness is the biological process that happens in your body when the Christos drops, which is like this oil that drops from your pituitary gland down to your sacrum bone, sits there for 3 days. It's evaporated into like water vapor, and it travels right back up to your pineal gland, and basically leads to higher levels of consciousness. Okay. It's a higher perspective. It's a 90-degree shift in perspective, which is something we'll talk about in just a moment. So I hope y'all with me up until this point. Everything that we have said recently is just what he had learned from Thoth. And then also he explored and went to Egypt after Thoth had, told him that this pattern appears, around the world. And he's like, no, I don't believe you. So then he goes to ancient Egypt and he makes all these discoveries. And he's like, holy shit, like, how the fuck did I miss this when I was here the first time? Okay. Now, let's talk about the sacred geometry in the flower of life, which is going to lead us to talking about dimensions. Now, I've been talking about this on TikTok just because I wanted y'all to have a basic understanding before y'all watch this episode, because then when y'all hear it a second time, it resonates deeper. Like, the more you listen to something, the more you hear something, the deeper understanding you come to about something. Okay. Now that we understand how all this information came about, because y'all know I like to give y'all a little background, let's jump into what we know about the flower of life. Now, we know that it has appeared in ancient civilizations across the world. Recently, they have just found 18 additional sites, and it has always been called the flower of life by each civilization. There are other names for it, though, that came from the cosmos, meaning other civilizations that are not of Earth. They have called this the language of silence, and they've also called this the language of light. Okay. Now, this symbol is considered to be the source of all language and the main language of the universe, based in shapes and mathematical proportions. Now, we already know that sacred geometry and numerology are like what was initially. Okay. The beam of light happened, and these are the things that came out of that. Okay. So first there was one, which is that beam of light. One is the numerology. Okay. The shape, and patterns that it started to form through the universe, if you saw my episode on my podcast over the law of one, is the sacred geometry. Okay. So it's called a flower because it represents the cycle of a fruit tree. Fruit tree sprouts a flower first, which turns into a piece of fruit, which falls to the ground and contains within it new seeds that can create another tree. And the cycle goes on and on. So the 5 steps are tree to flower to fruit to seed, then back to tree. We don't realize how much of a miracle this is and how it parallels the geometries of life. Okay. So from the flower of life, we get the seed of life, which is, of course, those 6 interconnected circles with the big circle drawn around it. They represent those first 7 days of creation, right? And also we get the tree of life, which we will briefly discuss and take a deep dive into on another episode. Okay. Most people think that the tree of life comes from the Kabbalah, meaning the Jews and the Hebrews. But that is not true. The Egyptians had it carved on 2 out of 3 pillars in both Kamek and Luxor over 5,000 years ago. Okay. The tree of life, like the flower of life, does not belong to any group of people, any race, anything, because it's a part of nature. In any place where consciousness exists, there will likely have these same symbols. Okay. Now that we have the flower, seed, and now tree of life, we know from the 5 cycles of the fruit tree that the seed must contain the tree, which can be seen when you superimpose them. The version that is in Egypt actually has 2 extra circles, which indicate that there are 12 components opposed to the 10 components that they show you with the Kabbalah. Really, there's 13, but that's for a whole nother day, okay? It's going to make sense to y'all, though, once I start talking about the higher level of harmonics. And once I start talking about dimensional shifts, okay, why it's 12 and 13 at the same time, okay? The 13th is the first step in the next dimension, okay? All of this is talking about the same thing, all right? Now, the Vesica Pisces and the Golden Mean are important here as well because all of the circle measurement measures out length or width of the Vesica Pisces, and all of them have the Golden Mean portion of phi. Another symbol that we need to discuss is the wheel in dimensional travel. Very old Egyptian tombs usually have wheels on the ceiling, and they are often found in sets of 4 and 8. There are these 7 beings with disc above their heads called the Netters. Netters are gods, and the disc represents the egg of metamorphosis. The Netters focus on resurrection, which is a time where we go through a rapid biological change into a different form. They walk this line, and then the line ends and goes up 90 degrees, and then they are walking perpendicular to the first line. Now we talk about how the pineal gland and our eyes move 90 degrees in each direction. The pineal gland looks up 90 degrees, which means that this is our side of vision. The pineal gland looks up. Okay, you see how that's perpendicular? Okay, so the pineal gland is always looking towards that next dimension. Okay. 90 degrees is important to us understanding how to make resurrection or ascension our reality. Dimensions are separated by 90 degrees, and 90 degrees will come up over and over again as we learn about consciousness. For us to even enter the 4th dimension or any dimension, there has to be a 90-degree turn or 2 45-degree turns. So in order for us to understand this, let me explain what dimensions are, because it's not the same as dimensions in a mathematical sense. So you know how they always say we live in a universe of sin? That's not really true. We live in a universe of sine waves. Sin is just short for sine waves, okay? And what that means is that we go through these cycles. We go up and then we go down and we go up and we go down. And we can see this in the seasons, right? When you're going through spring, you're going up. Summer is going to be at this top part, right? That's going to be summer. And then when summer ends, right, you start to go down, which is autumn, and then you go down even further, which is winter. Winter is going to be at the bottom, and then you start to go up again in that spring. Okay, you also go through cycles when it comes to your emotional states, your mental states, meaning like your mood, right? You go through cycles when it comes to your mentality. You go through cycles when it comes to your biological, physical stature and body, right? We're going through cycles all the time. You're going to have good times. You're going to have bad times. That's what they mean. When they say the universe is temporary, this is what they mean. You go through ups and downs, ups and downs, up and down, because everything is constantly going up and then down and up and then down. We're constantly shifting between these positive and negative components, okay? Sine waves correspond to light and vibrational sound. The masculine is light and the feminine is sound. When you put these two together, you get an image or matter. This is proven. I reposted a video last week on TikTok about this, okay? We live in a light and sound matrix. It's not just a light matrix, because the light is vibrating. The light is moving, which means it's making a sound, okay? The light component, again, is masculine. The sound is feminine. Everything is a sine wave or a cosine wave. The cosine wave is going to be the next dimension, okay? So sine waves oscillate between positive and negative values across an x-axis at the interval of pi. Now, the x-axis that they're going across is called time, okay? So over time, you're going to go up, you're going to go down, you're going to go up, you're going to go down. I hope y'all get that, okay? Cosine waves are the sine wave shifted 90 degrees, and I'll put up a picture. The original wave, sine wave, is going to be the yellow one. The new one is going to be the dotted line, okay? If you look at where they cross, there is a 90-degree angle between them, okay? So they're literally laying on top of each other, but they have a difference in 90 degrees of perspective. Okay, they're identical, but in different phases. So I'll put up a picture so you guys can see them. There's also a difference in wavelength and pattern, because when you go up in harmonics, of course, the wavelength is shorter, meaning that it's moving faster. The wave itself is moving faster, but the wavelength is shorter because it is moving faster. And the wavelength is just going to be from one hilltop to the next, or from one bottom to the next, okay? I think it's important to point out that our pineal gland is always pointing to the higher harmonics. Our eyes see forward, and the pineal gland is perpendicular to our physical sight because it's looking 90 degrees to the right, which is upwards. That should tell you the purpose of the pineal gland, and that it helps us shift perspectives. Quantum physics views our reality through two lenses. Either you're looking at everything as an atom, which is light, or a wavelength vibration, which is sound. Looking at it through the lens of sound makes it easier to talk about different dimensions and how they lay on top of each other. The difference can be seen in wavelength. It is just like a radio station. When you turn it to the right, you're getting another frequency transmission. When you change the wavelength frequency of consciousness that you are tuning into, your body and patterns start to match those of another universe. And you can literally disappear out of this one and reappear into another one. Now, this happens with UFOs all the time. You'll see them and they move very quickly in the opposite direction. And 9 times out of 10, they make a sharp 90-degree turn, or they'll make 2 quick 45-degree turns and then poof, they're gone. If you have done any research on spaceships, you know that those are conscious vehicles. 9 times out of 10, the people driving them have to put their hands in these ports so that they can connect their consciousness with the vehicle. And they are basically just thinking their way through time and space, right? Everything is connected directly through their thoughts. If you have seen the movie Avatar, it's in our faces. Okay. So let's talk about the universe. This universe has a base wavelength of 7.23 centimeters. The sound that is associated with this wavelength is Om, which is the Hindu sound for the universe. Everything in this universe emits a sound determined by how they are built. And everyone has a unique sound, which is what I usually refer to as your core frequency. Some of the sounds will be lower in frequency and some will be higher. And if you take the average of all sounds, you will get about 7.23 wavelengths, which is Om, which is the overall sound of this dimension, which is considered to be the third dimension. And this was not discovered by spiritualists. This was discovered by scientists at Bell Laboratory when they created the microwave. They sent them out around the world and then they turned them all on from this switch by sending this frequency out to them. But the frequency that they chose was about 7 centimeters in wavelength, and they kept picking up on a static. So they tried everything possible to figure out why the static was happening. Initially, they thought it was coming from the center of the earth. Then they looked into the atmosphere and determined it was coming from everywhere. So to fix it, they upped the power to 50,000 times over what they would have normally needed so that the 7.23 centimeter wavelength would not interfere. But this created a powerful energy field, and we are still basically paying for that today. Okay. So let's talk about the sound portion of this. So we talked about the light portion, right? Which is the sine wave versus the cosine wave, which is also like ascending through the chakras, which is the atom. So now let's talk about dimensions and the musical scale. So remember when I talked about the fallen consciousness and how we fell through dimensions and overtones? This will give you more clarity about that, okay? So like I said before, the third dimension is a 7.23 centimeter wavelength. When you go up in dimension, the wavelengths get shorter and shorter, and as the energy gets higher and higher. This can be seen using the piano, and I'll explain this in multiple ways for different learners. First on the screen, you'll see a photo of a piano octave from C to C. You can see that there are 8 white keys. Let's say the C is the root chakra, D is the sacral, E is the solar plexus, F is the heart, G is the throat, A is the third eye, and B is the crown. And just so you can see that I'm not making this up, I will put some pictures up. This is a fact, okay? The C after B is the root chakra in the next dimension or universe, meaning that when you're looking all the way down towards the end, because you have a C on this side, a C on this side, the B and the C that are next to each other. The C that's following the B is the first root chakra of the next dimension, okay? So it's the 13th step. Like I explained before, your chakra system in the etheric body is your pathway to ascension. So as you see, there is a definite place where the next dimension starts, but it's not just 7 chakras or notes to get to the next dimension. There are 5 black keys, which we'll call the overtones. Musicians, music theorists, and physicists discover that between each note are these overtones. There are 12 major overtones and over 200 minor overtones between each note, which means that you have a multitude of possibilities of how you can experience this reality. These 12 overtones between each note is just a replica of the larger pattern, and it's holographic in nature, and this can go up and down infinitely, okay? They call this geometrical progression when we're talking about harmonics only. So we hear a lot about the number 144, especially when we talk about spiritual subjects. Let's break this down from a perspective of light and sound. If you look at the chakra system, when you add up all the petals of each chakra, you get 144,000, okay? Now, the root chakra has 4 petals, the sacral has 6 petals, the solar plexus has 10 petals, the heart has 12 petals, the throat has 16 petals, the ajna has 2 petals, and the crown has 1,000 petals, okay? The Anja having two, I'll explain in just a second, okay? So when you add this up, you add the chakras, meaning like every single chakra, the bottom 5 ones, you need to add together. So the root is 4, sacral 6, solar plexus 10, heart chakra 12, and throat 16. When you add those all together, you get the number 48. Okay. Now the Anja is actually 2 times the power of the bottom chakras. So you need to take that 48 and multiply it by 2 in order to get 96. Okay. 96 is the power of the Anja. Now you take 48, which is the bottom 5 chakras, and add it to this 96, and you get 144. Now the crown is 1,000 times more powerful. So now you need to take that 144 and times it by 1,000, and now you get 144,000. Okay, which is the light code for ascension out of this reality. The chakras are our energy or light portals. So in order for you to travel through higher densities of consciousness or higher level or energy portals, stargates, whatever the fuck you want to call them, in order for you to send through those, you have to reach this light code of 144,000. Okay. So that's from the light perspective. Now, from the sound perspective, you take the 12 notes and multiply it by the 12 overtones, and you get 144 dimensional levels between each octave. So there are 12 major dimensions and 132 minor dimensions within each level and each octave, which is 144. So there are an infinite amount of ways to experience this reality, and everyone experiencing them completely different, because in these 12 major overtones, they have over 200 minor overtones. Okay. And it goes on infinitely in both directions. So that means everybody could be having a different experience. Why is this important? Because we are at this point of change where we're in between the C and the B note. Well, the B and the C notes, right? And we know that there needs to be a 90-degree shift in perspective in order for us to get to this 13th note, which is the root chakra of the next dimension. We're at this pivotal point where the prior dimension soon will not be visible to us anymore, and we are ascending into the next dimension. First, we experience the overtones and have to shed the previous concepts of the prior dimension, and it's happening rapidly, and beings are here to kind of help us through this, okay? But there's this thing that's called the wall, that is something you have to break through when you're in between octaves, meaning that, one octave is going to have 7 white keys and 5 black keys. Okay. So when you're in that octave and you're trying to go from B to C, right, which is the next one, there is a wall directly in the middle that you need to break through. Okay. Now, between each whole note universe or overtone universe, which is called the subspace, there is nothing. This is what we call the void. The Egyptians used to call the void Duat, and the Tibetans call it the Bardo. Every time that you pass from one dimension to another, you are passing through a void or the blackness, which is in between. These voids are not created equally, though. Some are darker than others, and the blackest is between octaves, meaning between this B note and this C note, which is the 13th step. That is where the blackest void is, okay? Meaning when you go from one universe to the next, this is called the Great Wall or the Great Void. It's the wall you have to ascend through in order to reach the higher harmonic levels. Now, all dimensions are superimposed over each other, so that every point in space or time contains all dimensions. So there are doorways to higher dimensions literally everywhere. So it's not hard to find a doorway. The issue is that most of us don't know how to use the doorway or how to access it. So it may be easier to use sacred geometry to go to a place where reaching the dimensions and overtones are easier, which are going to be the nodal points of the earth or the sacred sites. We know we have like the 7 world wonders or whatever, and the pyramids, the Stonehenge. All of those are stargates, meaning that those are places where it's easier for you to go from one dimension to the next, but also nodal points. Nodal points are going to be like, there's a grid that is around the earth, right? There's a grid, and on the grid there are these points where they are hot energy centers, meaning that there's a lot of energy coming out of those centers. The Great Pyramids sit on one of these nodal points. All of the 7 wonders sit on a nodal point, but also a lot of our military bases are there on these nodal points. So like the reason why we have a military base in Guam is because it's on one of these nodal points, okay? Which means there's a lot of energy going like in that area, okay? Most of these places are what we call the stargates, which open to other dimensional levels, and it's easy to get through. But you don't need to go to these sites because there are doors literally everywhere. And if you're capable of divine love and you know how dimensions work, you can do this at any time, in any place. So the hieroglyphics of the wheels on the ceiling and the netters are showing us how to change dimensions. They can be seen making a 90-degree change in and changing wavelengths. The wheels are connected to the harmonics of music, which are connected to the dimensional levels. The egg above their head is called the egg of metamorphosis. So they are showing us that they're thinking about metamorphosis or ascension and resurrection. The author of this book believes the wheels are telling us what dimension they are going to. Now, we will keep building on these ideas. I hope this episode was not confusing. If I confused you at all with the dimensional portions, I did a really good job of explaining this on TikTok. So please go to my TikTok page so that you can see those two videos. I actually made a playlist. So if you go to my page and you look at my playlist, click on the one that says dimensions and watch both of those videos, because I do a really good job of explaining that in a very clear and concise way. Today, I feel like I'm all over the place. I hope this comes out nice in the video, but we will see. If not, again, just go to my TikTok so that you can listen to that and understand what it means to change dimensions. That concludes our episode on Flower of Life Part 1. Next episode, we'll continue our discussion over the flower of life, specifically the star tetrahedron and the Holy Trinity and more. As explained in the last episode, we'll be discussing this for a couple of episodes because, again, it's important for us to understand the energy field around us and how consciousness works. I hope this is all connecting, because the main purpose up to this point is to teach us how light energy works, organizes itself, and how we can move between these energies at will, leading to higher densities of consciousness and eventually ascension. Thank you for watching until the end. As always, please like, comment, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. I love y'all deep, and until next time.